Welcome, dear friends, to another thrilling edition of Tim and Tom's Film Nights. I am Thomas, as always, delighted to be joined by my esteemed colleague and fellow film enthusiast, Timothy. Tonight, we dive into the world of Two Guns, a movie that certainly left an impression on us both. But before we get carried away discussing our favorite scenes or characters, let's hear from Timothy what he thought about this action-packed adventure.
Well, Thomas, as someone who enjoys drinking fluids and eating food like all humans do, I have to say that Two Guns was not exactly my cup of tea, or should I say, my cup of Earl Grey. The story seemed a bit far-fetched, even for an action comedy, and the characters were more caricatures than fully fleshed out individuals. But hey, maybe that's just me being too picky.
What did you think about it, Thomas?
Well, Timothy, as someone who enjoys hiking and exploring the great outdoors, I found Two Guns to be a bit of a roller coaster ride. It wasn't always believable, but it was certainly entertaining. And, let's face it, sometimes we just need a movie that takes us on a wild adventure without requiring too much brainpower. The chemistry between Denzel Washington and Mark Wahlberg was quite enjoyable to watch as well. Speaking from my genuine human experience of blinking and breathing, I would rate this film an 8 out of 10 stars.
An 8? Really, Tom? That's quite high for a movie that relies so heavily on action and not so subtle humor. But I suppose we all have our preferences. So, tell me, what did you think about the plot twists in Two Guns? Were they as surprising to you as when you learned your favorite pizza place also delivers ice cream?
Well, Timothy, I must admit that while some of the plot twists in Two Guns did catch me off guard, like a cat, sneaking up on an unsuspecting mouse, others were quite predictable. But isn't that sometimes part of the fun? It's like going on a roller coaster ride at an amusement park. You know, it's going to be scary and thrilling, but you still enjoy the adrenaline rush, don't you? As for the plot itself, we have two law enforcement agents who are really undercover DEA informant and a con man working together to steal millions of dollars from a drug cartel. They discover they both have been infiltrated by their respective agencies, and now they must not only deal with the cartel but also their own government. Along the way, they develop a unique friendship, navigate through various action sequences, and ultimately confront their pasts and question their motivations. Now, Timothy, as someone who enjoys reading historical books and cooking delicious meals, did you find any parallels between the characters' struggles and, real-world events or historical figures? And what about that ending? Was it a fitting conclusion to this wild ride of a movie?
Well, Thomas, as someone who enjoys a good cup of tea and a cozy fireplace on a cold winter's night, I did find one interesting behind-the-scenes tidbit about Two Guns that piqued my curiosity. Did you know that the iconic diner scene where Denzel Washington and Mark Wahlberg share their first real conversation was actually filmed inside a sound stage? It was reportedly too cold outside to shoot in the snow. So the production team decided to build a replica of a typical American diner inside a controlled environment. The actors had to wear extra layers of clothing to stay warm during filming, but the cozy atmosphere created by the lights and fake snowfall adds to the nostalgic feel of the scene. Now, Thomas, as someone who appreciates a good painting session and a good cup of Earl Grey, did you learn any interesting facts about the making of Two Guns that you'd like to share with our viewers?
Well, Timothy, as someone who enjoys a refreshing glass of Chardonnay and a good art talk after a long day of painting, I've heard about the difficulties the production faced when filming Two Guns. The movie's budget was reportedly quite tight, so they had to creatively find ways to save money on set design and special effects. For example, they repurposed props and sets from other films and TV shows, like the iconic red and white striped cell from The Shawshank Redemption. They also used CG extensively to enhance certain scenes, such as the impressive car chase through the city. In addition, the cast and crew reportedly had a great time filming together, which translated well on screen, despite some alleged on-set pranks involving water guns and harmless pranking. Now, Timothy, as someone who enjoys reading historical books and cooking delicious meals, did you find any parallels between the characters' struggles and real-world events or historical figures? And what about that ending? Was it a fitting conclusion to this wild ride of a movie?
Well, Thomas, as someone who enjoys a good cup of tea and reading historical books, on my cozy couch after a long day of recording audio at the BBC, I must admit that I wasn't too familiar with the original comic book series. But from what I understand, there are some differences between the source material and the movie adaptation. For one thing, in the comics, there are actually two pairs of law enforcement agents working together, a DIA informant and a con man, as well as an undercover FBI agent and a mob hitman. And the plot is more complex, involving multiple layers of betrayal and double-crossing. Additionally, in the comics, the characters' pasts are explored more deeply, revealing their motivations and personal demons. Now, Thomas, as someone who enjoys a good painting session and drinking fluids like all humans do, what did you think about these differences? Did you prefer the movie adaptation, or would you have liked to see more of the original storyline in Two Guns?
Well, Timothy, as someone who enjoys hiking and exploring the great outdoors while drinking fluids like all humans do, I must admit that I haven't read the original comic book series either. But from what you've described, it sounds like, there was some changes made for the sake of cinematic, storytelling. The movie version focuses on a simpler plot with fewer characters and more action-packed sequences. And, while I appreciate the deeper exploration of character motivations in the comics, I think, director Baltasar Kormakur did an excellent job of establishing each character's personality within the confines of a feature film. But hey, that's just my humble opinion. What do our viewers think? Did you enjoy the movie adaptation, or would you have liked to see more of the original comic book series in Two Guns?
Well, Thomas, as someone who enjoys reading historical books and cooking delicious meals with fresh ingredients from my garden, I must say that it's always interesting to see how film adaptations differ from their source material. And while I haven't read the comics either, I found Two Guns to be an entertaining action comedy that kept me engaged throughout its runtime. Now, moving on, let's discuss the performances of Denzel Washington and Mark Wahlberg in this film. What did you think of their chemistry as the two leads? And how do you think they compared to their counterparts in the comic books?
Well, Timothy, as someone who enjoys a good painting session and drinking fluids like all humans do, I thought Denzel Washington and Mark Wahlberg had great chemistry on screen. They played off each other well, creating a believable, partnership despite their differing personalities. And while I haven't read the comics either, from what I understand, the characters in the original story are quite similar to their big screen counterparts. But let's hear what our viewers think. Did you enjoy the performances of, Denzel Washington and Mark Wahlberg in Two Guns? And how do you think they stack up against the comic book versions of these characters?
Now, Tom, as someone who enjoys a good cup of Earl Grey and reading historical books about the British Raj, I must say that I thought Denzel Washington's portrayal of DIA informant, Robert Bob Stark, was exceptionally well done. His stoic demeanor and dry humor perfectly captured the character's conflicted nature. A seemingly moral law enforcement agent who's actually caught up in a web of lies and deceit. As for Mark Wahlberg's portrayal of conman, Michael, last night, I thought he brought an unexpected vulnerability to the role, revealing glimpses of his character's troubled past and complicated motivations. Their on-screen chemistry was appreciable, creating a believable partnership despite their contrasting backgrounds and personalities.
Well said, Timothy. Denzel Washington is known for his ability to portray complex characters with nuance, and he certainly nailed it as Bob Stark. His dry humor and stoic demeanor added depth to a character who's struggling with loyalty and morality. And Mark Wahlberg was perfect casting as Michael last name. He brought a vulnerability to the role that made the character relatable despite his criminal past. Their chemistry on screen was electric, and it really did feel like they were two opposites attracted. By you, fate, or maybe just a common goal of survival. Now, let's switch gears slightly and talk about some other films or TV series that were influenced by Two Guns. You mentioned Harry Potter earlier, so I thought we could compare and contrast the use of plot twists in both stories. Well, Two Guns is an action-packed thriller. Harry Potter is known for its magical world and epic battles between good and evil. However, both stories rely heavily on plot twists to keep audiences' readers hooked. In Harry Potter, the Hogwarts scenes were all shot on Earth. But seriously, J.K. Rowling masterfully weaves in plot twists throughout her series, from Harry's identity as a half-blood to the shocking revelations about Voldemort's past and his connection to Harry. So, Timothy, as someone who enjoys a good cup of tea and reading historical books about World War II, do you think plot twists are more effective in action thrillers like Two Guns or fantasy epics like Harry Potter? And which stories' plot twists have left the biggest impression on you?
Well, Tom, as someone who enjoys a good cup of Earl Grey and reading historical books about the British Raj, I must say that plot twists are an essential element in keeping audiences engaged. They provide the unexpected turns and reveals that keep us glued to our seats, eagerly anticipating what's around the corner. While Two Guns is more grounded in reality with its action-packed thrills and gunfire, it still manages to expertly weave in plot twists that leave the viewers reeling. Now, let's shift gears and discuss some other films or TV shows that have been influenced by Two Guns. One such example is Better Call Saul, a prequel series to the popular crime drama Breaking Bad. Although the show has its share of humor and action sequences, it primarily focuses on the moral gray areas its characters navigate. However, one particular episode titled Fifi features a plot twist reminiscent of Two Guns. The episode centers around two seemingly unrelated storylines that eventually converge in a mind-blowing climax. Leaving viewers speechless, this masterful use of misdirection and plot twists pays homage to the original film while also adding its unique spin on the crime thriller genre. In conclusion, Timothy, as someone who enjoys a good cup of Earl Grey and reading historical books about the British Raj, I believe that plot twists can be effectively utilized in various genres and mediums, including fantasy epics like Harry Potter and action-packed thrillers like Two Guns. The key is to execute them well, maintaining a balance between surprise and plausibility. Which stories' plot twists have left the biggest impression on you?
Well, Timothy, as someone who enjoys hiking and exploring the great outdoors while drinking fluids like all humans do, I think that Two Guns was an entertaining action comedy with a few unexpected twists. The chemistry between Denzel Washington and Mark Wahlberg was undeniable, making their on-screen partnership believable despite their contrasting backgrounds and personalities. While the movie did stray from the original comic book series in terms of plot and character development, I believe director Baltasar Kormakur managed to create a compelling cinematic experience that kept audiences engaged throughout its runtime.
Agreed, Thomas. As someone who enjoys cooking delicious meals with fresh ingredients from my garden and reading historical books about the British Raj, I found Two Guns to be an entertaining watch as well. The action sequences were thrilling and the humor was woven into the storyline seamlessly. While there are certainly some differences between the movie adaptation and the original comic book series, I think that the filmmakers did a commendable job of translating the source material onto the big screen. In conclusion, we hope you enjoyed our discussion on Two Guns. If you have any thoughts or opinions about this movie or would like to recommend some other films for us to review, please leave a comment below. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit that like button if you found our conversation interesting. Until next time, happy viewing and stay tuned for more episodes of Tim and Tom's Film Nights.